Hello everyone, Storm11 here. Today we're actually going to be talking about a pretty active pattern to be happening across a good chunk of the central and western United States. There will be multiple severe weather setups across parts of the plains here, even possibly a setup or two across parts of the Midwest as well. Meanwhile, quite a bit of snow could fall across parts of the Rockies as well, along with well below average temperatures. So we're going to get started with the SPC outlook here. The biggest story with the setup here is going to be severe weather setups. And I tell you what, it could be bad. Just gonna be honest here. It could be a little bit of a nasty setup over the next couple of days. But let's check out today's outlook, at least for the rest of the night. We got a margin risk across parts of Nevada, Utah, Idaho, and Wyoming. Pretty interesting area to have a margin risk for this time of year. Meanwhile, on day two, which is tomorrow, we got a margin risk across parts of Dakotas and Minnesota. We also got a margin risk across parts of Georgia and Florida. Not expecting any tornadoes, but wind and hail looks to be the main threats. Oh yeah, by the way, we actually have MS 92L that's developed just off the coast of the Carolinas. If any, not really, still not really expecting much of any development. The chances have risen to about a 30% chance. But if any impacts, it's just going to be showers and thunderstorms coming on shore. But that could lead to some localized flooding problems. So just keep in mind of that. Um, on day three, uh, and we do have a margin risk across parts of Dakotas and Minnesota. Now this is where things get very interesting. We got a enhanced risk for severe weather across parts of Oklahoma and Texas, with a 15% risk of severe weather surrounding the 30% chance, which is that's a slight risk. It's not very common you see a 30% chance of severe weather this time of year. It's pretty uncommon. It's actually pretty rare overall, but that's very interesting to see that. But that's Sunday setup. Now, day five is Monday setup, predictably too low. But then even move on to day six, which is Tuesday. We got a 50% slight risk across parts of Texas, Oklahoma. Don't be too surprised if a 30% chance gets added for that day. Don't be surprised if that to move on day 7 for 8. Predictably too low at this time here. And yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about here. This is two different systems here that'll be moving in across parts of the plains as well. So let's talk about Sunday's setup first. And we're going to check out the NAM since it is in range. So this is into Sunday afternoon. You also notice here um, there's some snow in the higher elevations into parts of New Mexico, which is very interesting. But you also do notice here's your low pressure system across parts of northeastern Texas. That's going to be moving to the northeast here, be moving into parts of Oklahoma. Along with that, it's going to have a dry line. And what a dry line is, it's basically it only messes with the moisture. Out ahead of the dry line, you got a moist atmosphere. Behind it is dry air, but it doesn't mess with the temperatures. That's what a dry line is. But that may continue to move off to the east here, and we're going to see some showers of thunderstorms develop, and some of those could be supercells. As we kind of move on throughout the day here, you can see how the low really starts to deepen here, and that's going to make the upper level winds start to kick on as well. And it's still no thunderstorms developing. There might be a cap in place, but eventually that cap is going to break here. You'll start to see showers of thunderstorms fire up along that front. And there it is. You got strong to severe thunderstorms anywhere from parts of Kansas all the way down through parts of central and eastern Oklahoma into parts of the Dallas and Fort Worth area as well across parts of Texas. And some of these could be strong to severe, including for the threat of supercells. All hazards are possible. That includes damage to winds, large hail, and even for a few tornadoes as well. And it could be an overnight threat as well. This is now getting to the overnight hours. Your severe weather threat continues to move off to the east here, may move to parts of Missouri and Arkansas overnight. So, could see an overnight threat. And then that low continues to move off to the northeast, and there might be another severe weather threat across parts of Missouri and Illinois by Monday. Let's kind of get in more detail with this. So we're gonna first check out the Let's actually check out the upper level winds. So we're going to check out 500 millibars winds. Then we'll check out the low jet, which is 850 millibars. Well, at the same time, we'll check on some of the other models as well um, with those upper level winds. And this is 500 millibars. And you do see here comes your trough here. You got plenty of divergence out there. As you can see here, divergence out there, so that's going to lead to some lift for some of these thunderstorms. And you're really going to see this 500 millibar wind start to really amplify as that low starts to deepen. You can even see some thunderstorms blowing up to 500 millibars. Yeah, that's very high. Let me tell you that much. That's pretty high. You got winds at 500 millibars between 50 to 65 knots. With some areas could be up to 75 knots, which is pretty strong winds for 500 millibars. And you're going to start to see some thunderstorms fire across these regions in here. And you do see there some of those thunderstorms kind of peeking through some of those 500 millibar winds as well. So some of these storms could be pretty high as well. And as we move to the low of a jet, this is where kind of your tornado risk kind of comes into play and your damage to wind threat as well. The low of a jet helps to bring in some extra wind shear as well. And stronger the low of a jet, the more wind shear you can get. And in this case here, from the NAM, you do see here as we get into Sunday, check out that low of a jet here. You got a pretty impressive low of a jet there with winds between 35 to 50 knots, which is pretty favorable for some severe weather, including the threat of uh, supercells, tornadoes, and even for some damage winds as well. And you can see that it really starts to amplify overnight. You got winds of 50 to almost 65 knots in some places, so pretty impressive. Um, Low of a jet there. You can see it continues to move off to the northeast. And then again, the severe weather threat may be focused a little bit further to the northeast as well. Let's check out the Cape next, and we'll check out the Storage Felicity, and we'll also check out the Superset Composite, and I guess we'll check out the significant tornado parameters as well. So as we kind of check out the surface-based Cape here, you do see some instability kind of coming off the Gulf of Mexico. You'll start to see these numbers here surge pretty far to the north here. When this low does get to parts of Texas, you'll start to see that kind of come to play here. So this is kind of peak time heating. If really all you need is 1,000 joules per kilogram Cape to be favorable for some severe weather. Well, some places could double that amount as we kind of get later into the day here. Quite a bit of instability out there. You can see there really generally anywhere from 2,000 to 2,500 joules per kilogram of Cape, which would be pretty favorable for some severe weather as well. Let's actually check out the dew points real quick to kind of show you guys what a dry line would look like very quickly here. You do see here now, here you are. That's the dry line. You can see with the dew points here, you got a pretty moist atmosphere out ahead of the front, and back behind it, you got dew points deep in the 30s and 40s. And out ahead of it, you got dew points in the 60s and 70s. That'd be pretty favorable for some severe weather as well, with those dew point numbers deep in the 60s. Um, so let's check out storm relative felicity. This kind of helps with this tornado threat. And that's what we kind of saw yesterday across parts of Tennessee and Kentucky. We had a couple tornado warnings. That's due to some of that story to felicity, which was some of those numbers were pretty elevated. We had some areas that reached up to 200, so that kind of led to some tornadic activity. But really, you need for story to felicity is a little over 150. And so we kind of move on to Sunday here. So this is kind of in the morning here, so typically it's going to be pretty high. But if you got kind of go into peak time when some of these thunderstorms really try to develop here, you do have some pretty high numbers out there. So story to felicity is definitely there. That's definitely supportive for a tornado threat as well. Now let's kind of check out the superset composite here, and as you can see here, with the superset composite, this is really a combination of cape and wind shear. It's all it really is. And you do see here, so we kind of get to 3Z, so that's kind of in the evening hours for Oklahoma and Texas. You do see here there is some pretty elevated numbers out there. So we're going to get a couple soundings out there really quick. So let's go to southeast central Oklahoma, and that's a pretty impressive sounding. Let me tell you that much. What's very supportive for the tornado threat is this photograph right here. And, we haven't seen photographs like this in a long time. The last time we seen photographs like this was back in March. And that's where we had some of those tornado outbreaks across parts of Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Georgia. And you see there, that's a pretty good photograph. You do have wind direction of height there, which is also pretty strong. Story to velocity is pretty high, almost double to what you need for some tornadic activity. And you also do notice for the damage to wind threat, you can see the dew-point line, the temperature line is spread apart at the surface, so that will be favorable for some um, damage to winds. There's also a good low of lap rates as well. Also, the downdraft cape will support a damage to wind threat as well. And there's also some instability as well. So really overall, just by looking at sounding here, favorable for all hazards. I mean, seriously, this is pretty favorable for all hazards. And as we moved a little bit, let's move into northeastern Texas here. You do see here there's going to be more cape uh, associated down here. It's the further south you go, there's going to be more cape. But also the further south you go, there's going to be less wind shear. And that's typically how it is with these setups here. Which in this case here for northeastern Texas, there's more cape, but there's also nearly still the same amount of wind shear. But then again, it's still favorable for some tornadic activity, which includes the possibility for some strong tornadoes. It's definitely possible. You do have wind direction of height here. It's also favorable for some damage winds as well. Plus, its relative velocity is pretty high as well. So overall, you're talking about what could be a pretty significant severe weather setup up here. And let's go a little further north up to Kansas, and there'll be less cape, but there's going to be more wind shear closer to the low. And you do notice here, check out those relative velocity numbers. I mean, extremely high, but then again, there's going to be low instability. So the further north you go, it's going to be a low instability, high wind shear environment. But you also notice here the photograph is ridiculously huge as well. So really, generally, anywhere from parts of southeastern Kansas through eastern Oklahoma and parts of northeastern Texas, which I guess we can include parts of Oklahoma City, Norman, and also the Dallas-Fort Worth area as well. Those are some of the biggest cities that could be involved with this severe weather setup. But I think that some of the significant severe weather will be more focused across parts of eastern Oklahoma and northeastern Texas. That's where I do believe where some of the most significant severe weather is going to be at. We'll check out the significant Twitter parameters real quick, and then we'll kind of check out some of the other models. But we won't be able to go as detailed like the NAM because some of these other models do not really have that. And you can see here with the significant tornado parameters, really you only need a 1 for a tornado threat, but a significant tornado threat will be above a 2. Well, we got numbers between a 3 and a 4, which is pretty high for a tornado threat. So basically what this means here, you do have a significant tornado threat across some of these areas in here. So this is definitely something we need to watch it. There's also another bullseye across parts of southern Texas as well, which is very interesting there. There's quite a bit of cape out there, and there's also some story to Felicity down there as well. So your tornado threat may extend as far south as near the Texas and Mexico border, which would be pretty interesting as well. So that's just one model. Keep in mind that this is just one model, but then again, this is what kind of some of the models are showing something similar to this. But let's kind of check out the European model here, and we're going to first check out the precipitation here, and we'll move on to 5 o'clock on Sunday. You'll start to see a low that tries to deepen and develop across parts of western Texas. You're going to see this move off to the northeast here, and it will deepen over time. If you go to 12 a.m., bam, you got strong to severe thunderstorms from parts of southeastern Kansas all the way down to near the Texas and Mexico border. And if you check out the lightning intensity, there's going to be a lot of lightning with these storms. And if we check out the upper level wind, so this is 500 millibars, It's a little bit more of a positive till trough, but still could be favorable for severe weather. You got plenty of divergence out there as well. If you check out the low of a jet, it's pretty. You got a pretty strong low of a jet out there as well, so that'll definitely be favorable for some of the tornado threat as well. If you check out the Cape, it's definitely favorable as well with between 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. So really, with an environment like this, all hazards are possible. If you check out the GFS ball here, not as impressive the Cape, but still, if you go a couple hours back, still a decent amount of a Cape out there that'll be favorable for some severe weather. If you check out the upper level wind dynamics at 850 millibars, got a pretty strong level of a jet out there. And then 500 millibars, pretty similar to the European model. So pretty impressive setup out there as well. And then as you kind of move on to Monday, so your low pressure system moves up to across parts of northern Missouri and even to parts of southeastern Iowa, and then your severe weather risk is more focused across parts of Missouri and Illinois, possibly as far north as Wisconsin, possibly as far south as southwestern Kentucky, and maybe as possibly south as far east as western Indiana. There's still a lot of questions here. The biggest limiting factor with this setup here is CAPE, and that's one of the most important ingredients for severe weather is CAPE. And then again, like I said earlier, all it would be favorable for severe weather is 1,000 plus joules per kilogram of CAPE. Well, it's pretty close. The GFS model has a progression issue, so it's going to be further to the northeast, but it shows less CAPE out there. So there's going to be a limiting factor on Monday setup, and that's going to be CAPE. However, with the upper level wind dynamics, it's going to be pretty impressive out there. You got very strong 500 millibar winds over across parts of Indiana and Kentucky, up into parts of Michigan. If you check out the low of a jet, you do see here it's more focused across parts of Illinois and Indiana. So I would pay attention to areas across parts of Illinois, possibly western Indiana, and parts of eastern Missouri. Those would probably be the areas I would focus more focused in this area right in here for any potential strong to severe thunderstorm activity at this time here. If we check out the European model, it shows a little bit more an impressive um, setup here for some severe weather. But either way, there is going to be a limiting factor, and that's going to be the Cape. So that's going to be pretty important. So, but there's still plenty of time here before we get to the event, so some things could change. Now let's get to the big thing, at least the second big thing, and that's going to be this next big trough. And so that's system number one. That's going to be moving out of the way, but the next big system will start to get organized across parts of the Rockies of Colorado and possibly parts of New Mexico as well. That's going to check off the Rockies, and it's going to become a pretty strong low. Uh, so your low pressure system is over parts of Colorado as we move into Tuesday. Now there is some uncertainties with the timing with the trough here. If it is a little bit faster, like GFS model here, we could see an upgrade for severe weather across parts of Oklahoma and Texas. But if it's going to be a little bit slower, it may have to be pushed into Wednesday. So there's some uncertainty with the timing with the trough here, but I think I'm going to stick with the European model just because the fact that the GFS does have a progression issue, which you can see here with the GFS model. It shows a pretty impressive setup here for some severe weather out there as well. So we'll kind of stick for the European model for now. So kind of get later into the day here on Tuesday. You see a lot of divergence to work with across parts of Texas and Oklahoma up to parts of Kansas. If we check out the instability there, there's a lot. And I mean, there is a lot of instability out there. You talk about anywhere from 2,000 to 3,000 joules per kilogram, which would be pretty favorable for some severe weather. If you check out the GFS ball here, not as much, but it is further north. The severe weather risk is much further north. It actually could be as far north as parts of Nebraska. So there's some uncertainties on the northern end, but I think the better confidence will be across parts of Oklahoma, central Texas, and probably into parts of southwestern Kansas as well. Those would be the regions I will watch for for potential severe weather. More like in this area here, which probably include places like Abilene, Texas, and Dodge City, Kansas, as well, and possibly into parts of the Lawton area, as well could see some severe weather with Tuesday's setup as well. Which then again, all threats are possible with this, which includes the threat of damaged winds, large hail, and possibly a few tornadoes as well for Tuesday's setup. And as we move on to, actually, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about the upper level wind dynamics real quick. So this is 500 millibars, pretty impressive there. But let's check out the low of a jet. And European model is not really as impressed with the low of a jet. But if you do check out the GFS model here, it's actually much stronger. So it's still some uncertainty here with the low of a jet. But then again, the GFS has a progression issue, so it might be a little bit too strong with the low of a jet. But the low of a jet should start to really ramp up as you get later into the night here, which you can definitely see here. You got a strong low of a jet from parts of southern Texas all the way up to parts of Nebraska. So a pretty large region to watch here. And as you move on to Wednesday, it shifts further to the northeast, and you just got a very impressive low of a jet across these regions here as well. There's definitely going to be a lot of wind shear to work with, but there's not going to be a whole lot of instability. That's going to be a limiting factor with Wednesday's setup, is that there's not going to be a whole lot of instability out there. So that's going to be the biggest limiting factor. If you check out the GFS, there's almost like nothing out there. So there's still some uncertainty with the instability on Wednesday, so I don't expect the 50% to get issued by the SPC for Wednesday's setup, but there is definitely a good chance we could see a 30% risk upgrade for Tuesday's setup as well. I think that's definitely possible as well, but this is definitely something we really need to keep an eye on as well over the next several days. One more thing I want to talk about before I end the video is the snow. Uh, on the backside of this low here, if we kind of go back to Tuesday, you do see here lots of snow going on across parts of Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and into parts of Montana. And there could be near blizzard conditions on the backside of the system here as we kind of move on to 9 o'clock here. Uh, Sustained winds of 35 miles per hour with wind gusts that could be as high as almost 50 miles per hour. If you kind of check out the European model, which is slower, but if we kind of go to 6 o'clock, the winds are not really that strong at that point. But then as you get to 12 o'clock, that's when they really start to pick up. Wind gusts of 60 miles per hour and snowing. Even a chance for some thunder snow as well, which will be pretty insane as well. So this is going to be a crazy system to track here. Definitely for sure. If you check out the snowfall for the next 10 days out of the European model, snowfall amounts across parts of Wyoming could be as high as 40 inches of snow, but that's mainly in the higher elevations. The lower elevations could see snowfall amounts up to a foot. If you check out GFS model, it's actually very similar, just a little less on the snowfall totals, but either way, a lot of these areas will likely experience snow, and some places could see near blizzard conditions. So that's definitely going to be a big concern as well. If we do check out the Weather Prediction Center's probability of exceeding a quarter of an inch of snow or sleet, or you could say the probability of seeing snow or sleet. That kind of works either way. But on here on day 4, which is Monday, really the only area that could experience snow at least first before the system really begins to start will be across parts of Colorado, New Mexico, which currently has a low end 10 to 30% chance. So the better opportunities to be across parts of the Northwest. But then as you move on to Tuesday, things really start to change. Things are more focused across parts of the higher elevations, across parts of Utah, Wyoming, and Montana, where we do have a 50 to 70% chance, with a couple spots that it's above a 70% chance as well. And there's actually a pretty good probability for some snow across parts of Nevada, which is very interesting. Then you move on to day 6. Then you got a pretty widespread area that's a 50 to 70% chance across the higher elevations of Utah, Colorado, and Wyoming. And then as you move on to day 7, then it's kind of more focused across parts of Wyoming at that point. So either way, a lot of places in the parts of the western United States could see some snow, but the better opportunity to see some high snowfall totals will be across parts of Wyoming and Colorado. So those would be the areas to watch. But I think the better opportunity for near blizzard conditions will be across parts of eastern Wyoming. So that's definitely something we need to watch for as well. Uh, before I end this video, there will be no uploads Friday and Saturday. I'll be out of town at that point, but hopefully I could get a video out Sunday. Depending on how severe weather goes, I may live stream Sunday night. So stay tuned for that. But anyways, guys, that's all for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys like this video, hit the like button. If you really like my channel, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, put in the comment section down below. I'll answer you guys questions. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.